Today's discussion is probably one of the most important topics of the current time, and that's our ability to adapt. And boy, have we needed to adapt recently. I mean, we've got used to doing things online, to people constantly looking at our chins rather than the eyes, telling everyone they're on mute, which we haven't had to do today, which I'm very pleased about. And also to when presentations are being given, the words next slide please, becoming a part of the landscape. And so on that note, next slide please. So for those of you who don't know 3C, we're one of the largest providers of specialist IT consultancy to the social housing sector. But we don't just work with housing associations and registered providers. We work with a myriad of the suppliers as well. And boy, have they had to deal with a level of disruption in recent times. You know, some good examples of people we've been working with, National Housing Federation, Housemark, CIH. These are organisations that got a tremendous amount of their revenues coming from conferences and networking groups and things like that. And these things are just evaporated in the way they used to be. And with that went a tremendous amount of their revenue. So they're having to adapt. We've got some new providers coming through as well. People like DIN. I don't know if you've come across DIN, but if you haven't, we'll talk about them in a bit more detail. Disruptive Innovators Network, and that's all about the changes going on now and how they could be introduced within the sector. Obviously, we've got Microsoft 365 and Dynamics, changing the way in which we allow data to flow within our organizations. So very, very much a key component part of what we do now. I think we first started introducing Dynamics within RHP in 2010. So it's been around for a while now, but it's beginning to come of age. And data's a big thing these days. You know, we've actually consulted with the government recently on its new data quality framework that's introducing, and this week we've been in discussions with MHCLG, of which that's the ministry of which the regulator of social housing is a part, as to whether, you know, they are going to start using data quality within the whole governance process. So yeah, lots of disruption going on. Software companies probably more so than almost anyone else. Next slide, but yeah, already beat me to it. And 3C, we're being disrupted too. Some of our traditional services just aren't in demand the way they used to be, but we're replacing them. And this is where the grow your own comes in as well. One of the things we're doing at the moment, for instance, is developing a portal that provides consulting materials for particularly the smaller organisations that couldn't really afford 3C services very often. So this provides them all with wealth of information, and this is all developed using a SharePoint filter. A SharePoint portal that we developed internally, and that should go live on the 1st of April. And again, we've actually built these skills up internally. Next slide, please. And then we have this, which is effectively around the culture change piece. So this is all about competence. We've worked recently with Clwyd, who is the largest HA in Ireland, and they want to make sure that their skills around data are right. So they've got a new data strategy, and with that comes a whole load of data skills that they need within the organization. And we put this kind of dashboard and competency framework together to help them assess that internally. Again, all done within the Microsoft suite. And I think things like this are going to become a component part of what we do. And this next one, another dashboard, Power BI dashboard, that's being used to monitor data quality. And we'll talk more about data and data quality assurance, because again, I think that's a component part of what every organization is going to have to get particularly good at. Next slide, please. So this is Charles Darwin, and he said it's not the strongest species that survive nor the most intelligent, but the ones who are most responsive to change. And that's what we've got to do now. And this change is not something that's new, but it has taken a bit longer than I thought, to be honest with you. This slide here was part of a keynote speech I gave at the ICT conference at Olympia in November 2010. And someone had asked me if I'd speak on the topic of this new thing called the cloud and how it was going to impact the sector. And I at the end made it very clear to everyone that if they weren't ready to embrace the cloud and adapt to make the most of it, then we are likely to lose relevance within our organizations. Well, that was 11 years ago, so it has taken a little bit longer, but I think we all agree it has happened now, and things seem to be moving ever faster than they've ever done before. Next slide, please. I mentioned DIN earlier. If you don't know DIN, I would Disruptive Innovators Network. I would recommend you to take a look, because this is probably the fastest growing network in social housing. They didn't exist a couple of years ago, but now I think they've got well over 100 members. And the idea of the group is to introduce innovation and encourage the things to change within the sector. And they also carry out, there's quite a few collaboration groups that they have that are working on things like prop tech and artificial intelligence that that could be extremely valuable. So not quite yet, please, back a slide. They brought out last summer this document, The Future of Housing IT, which was referred to within the kind of advertising for this event. And next slide, please. And what this has basically said is that that IT has got to change, and we are no longer a kind of a support function, but we are becoming a real primary strategic component of the business. And so often in social housing, we've had a situation where IT department has been a bit of a silo, and its representation at executive level has been the finance director. I mean, go figure, how does that one work? You know, I can understand finance directors are very interested in return on investment, value for money, and this is all associated with what IT can bring, but generally talks a very different language to that of IT. And you could argue as well that not in the best position to therefore direct and mentor those within IT. So things like that have got to change. We're often asked to come in and review IT departments, and we do find problems, but not often always the IT department's fault. It's that lack of understanding within the business. There is a need for representation at an executive level, and we are beginning to see it. We're seeing a new breed of CIOs particularly come into the business. One of the services that we have, which we call the virtual director, which is kind of a part-time IT director that can come in and provide assistance one day a month or whatever it may be. You know, that's taken off in recent times, and it needs to, because from a governance perspective, the regulator is looking for organizations to have key expertise at that senior level. And let's face it, technology is now absolutely key to the running of a business, so it has to be there. And this is an opportunity for us all to kind of raise our game and become part of that kind of senior level decision making. Next slide, please. And what we're seeing is technology changing. So when we talked about IT, certainly for the last 20 years or so, we'd normally be talking about computers and networks and software. That's changing. It's all about the I now, the information. You know, technology is just an enabler. It's the information that's going to power our business and help us deliver great value, great customer service, and it'll provide us with the insight we need to achieve it. Next slide, please. And we're in, again, a wonderful position. You know, technology and data touch everything in the business. If we want to get our customer service right, we need the right technology and data. Those processes that will ensure we offer great service, particularly those online, need people with the skills around technology and data. You know, the people and culture piece, you know, culture change eats technology change for breakfast. So we need those that can translate the technology so that the people appreciate that it's going to give them a better life, it's going to help them provide better services, it's going to improve things, and there's an important part for IT to play in there. Next slide, please. And we talk about that seat at the top table and being able to kind of translate technology or business needs into technology solutions. And again, from a 3C perspective, it's, if we talk about technology, we'll often see the people we're talking to, if they're not technologists, we'll see their lights go off. And that's because these are the things that they really care about. These are the things that are hitting the boardroom table at the moment: health and safety around fire, etc., governance and making sure you get a best grading you possibly can, customer satisfaction, value for money, how we're going to operate post-COVID. These are the things that they're going to be talking about currently. And if you survey them, 96% of them will say that technology and data will provide the solution. And things like Power Platforms, simple workflows, getting these things that traditionally have been a problem internally. We've recently looked at things like holiday planners and room bookings and things like that. They can simply be done using these kind of low-code type techniques. So a tremendous opportunity for us as IT people to embed ourselves in the business and help create that change. Next slide, please. And boy, do HAs need us to help. They're under an illusion in many cases that they're doing well around technology. This was a survey carried out a few years ago, and we asked housing association executives to rank where they were on their journey, and 40% of them said that they consider themselves innovators and early adopters, and another 40% said they were part of the early majority. So they're all very bullish about how they foresaw themselves, and yet half of them didn't expect to be using AI within their call centers by 2025, and a quarter of them didn't believe they'd be using data to better manage tenancies and arrears by 2025. I mean, that's just crazy. And these organizations, our organizations, may feel that we're ahead of the curve, but that may be compared to each other, because compared to other sectors, as Bob said earlier, we're often in the dark ages and we're lagging some years behind. Next slide, please. This is a statement from Nick Atkins. He's the chief exec of Yorkshire Housing now, and probably one of the more inspirational and innovative leaders within the sector. And he believes that the problem we have is that there's just been this lack of a burning platform. And this risk-averse approach that we've had has been one that's really hindered the sector. He made this comment here: why councils got really good at self-serve. It's because they have a massive burning platform. They've had a 40% reduction in their budgets, so they haven't got the people to deal with all the service desk stuff that they used to have. So and I don't know if those figures are actually right, but it's true. If you have to do something, then you do it. Nick thinks that coronavirus has created a burning platform of sorts, and I suggest he's right in that. He also says another burning platform is universal credit, and that it will put 63% of income that was previously guaranteed at risk. Now, this is the kind of stuff that other sectors have had to deal with for years, so it's nothing new. But we've just been fortunate enough within this sector where it hasn't been a major issue. Next slide, please. And Nick's answer to it is that he's not going to actually employ anyone else. He's just going to use staff differently. So come back to this developing your own talent. Why do your own talent rather than bring it in? Well, we've all got tremendous knowledge of our business that you just can't bring in from outside unless someone's coming from somewhere else in the sector. It's often much cheaper to grow your own talent as well. And if we look at what motivates people to come to work, we like to think it's money, but generally no, money is considered a demotivator, believe it or not, because once we've had it a few months, it's just the money we're on, and we just take it for granted. If we're not happy with our money, it can be a major demotivator every single day. But the things that motivate us to come to work are things like recognition, development, as I've just said, the environment that we work in, and the security we feel in our jobs. So yeah, we need to make sure our environment is right. And in order to do that, particularly when we're working from home these days, is to make sure we have the right technology. If the technology is right, generally, we'll probably have a good day. If the technology lets us down, oh my goodness, can it be frustrating? Next slide, please. We've also got to get the data right. I mentioned this earlier. Data is now considered new oil, as many of you have probably heard. But when you think about it for a moment, if we're making decisions in the business, you know, just look at some of these points here. You know, would you prefer to make decisions based on science or gut feel? Would you like to empower your teams to make the right decisions and get things fixed first time? You know, these are all questions that are obvious answers to. You know, would you rather make decisions based on 90% fact and 10% gut feel? You know, it's obvious. That's the way it needs to be, and not the other way around. Next slide. And from a governance perspective, the regulator are really focusing in on this, because far too often they're finding that things that they've been told prove not to be correct. And so we're beginning to hear the words "prove it" now far more frequently used. And this comment here, one accurate measurement can be worth 1,000 expert opinions. It's true. You know, when we're making decisions, we want to make them based on fact, not someone's opinion. Those opinions can far too often be impacted by our own personal view as to what we want to achieve. And that's not necessarily always in the best interest of the business. Next slide. But let's not kid ourselves. Getting hold of this data can be a real problem. We have this kind of myriad of software systems and spreadsheets that don't talk to each other. We've got executive teams that, as I've said, lack the skills in this area and often know that they've got problems, but because they don't know how to deal with them, they just find them too much of a challenge, so they don't address them. You know, as technologists, we have the ability to liberate this information and help our organizations to work far more effectively. It's those organizations that get this data challenge sorted that are the ones that are going to flourish in the future. We've got this classic situation of being kind of data rich and information poor, and that's got to change. We need, and as IT people, we have the ability to help get this kind of information that provides actionable insight within our organizations. Next slide, please. And you know, with every day that goes by, we create more data. I think they say that that every 2 years the amount of data in the world doubles. And IoT, which is kind of a fairly hot topic at the moment for many, is a great example of that. But there's no good point at putting IoT in if we're not going to be able to use the information and insight that provides. We have a customer in Scotland, and they had a real push for wanting to adopt IoT to show that they were kind of on the cutting edge of technology. And yet when we put the question to them, well, what are you going to do with the information and the data? They hadn't even thought of it. And that's where the opportunity is, getting data savvy IT people to help them to turn what is could be a hugely valuable technology that can change the way you operate from being kind of failure based, because let's face it, at the moment so often it's event based what we do. You know, somebody falling into arrears, a repair being needed, something failing. You know, it's all reactive, unplanned, unstructured, inefficient, ineffective. It's not a great way to work. There is a better way, but it's all about gathering information and doing something with it. Next slide, please. And this isn't new. This is my own experience. I used to be the managing director of a business called Montal. We bought that business in 2007. It was in a few problems at that stage, but it was okay. It was definitely improvement that could be made. But the big difference was in 2008, we were hit by a burning platform, which was Northern Rock going bust. And as a result of that, the banks all kind of closed up. They wanted their money back. They put kind of tougher covenants in place, and we had to change the way we operated to survive. We used a kind of IoT as a piece of software called Kaseya, and we seeded that on our customers' systems, and then that started to give us information about what those systems were doing. And so often we could spot they were starting to fail before they actually failed, and we could try and do something about it. And this had an enormous impact on the business, and by 2014 we'd grown the business by over 3 times. We'd only added 2 more people to the service desk, so much more was being done online and proactively, but more importantly, we were much more efficient in the way we dealt with the calls that we received. So only 19% of the phone calls actually led us to go to site, and when we did go to site, we were usually far better equipped to have the spare parts needed and fix things first time. So come back to this: if you've got the information and you can do it and work proactively, you can save a fortune and work hugely more proficiently. And this isn't new. This is things that are going on elsewhere and have been for years. Next slide, please. So right now, we have a chronic shortage of digital skills. And I come back to it. The easiest option is to grow your own. There is the potential to trap people in, and let's be honest, that potential is probably greater now than it has been for years, because we are within a very stable market that compared to things like retail and travel. But I come back to it. Growing your own is for the reasons already given, often so much for better idea, but we've got to make sure that we are now the people that are going to come into the business and help solve the problems. We have a fantastic opportunity, because this is a sector that provides so much good, so much purpose, helping individuals and communities. We really are in a position where we can help use technology to produce real, tangible social value. Next slide, please. We're also going to need to manage our suppliers better. We've often done things in-house, and people have said, well, I don't want to outsource it because well, you have to bring it back in again at a later date. Well, that's not going to be an option in the future. We've got to get better at managing our suppliers, and this is a great opportunity for us as teams to be the custodians of the supplier relationship, to make sure we're getting good value, high quality services, to make sure that they're safe and they're compliant. And that's all about, again, understanding what our businesses need and actually getting out there, working within the departments, and not just within the IT team. We've got to understand how it works, and again, help them to become more effective, help them and empower them to provide social value. Next slide, please. There's still going to be a need for a help desk, but in fact, I think I'm right in saying that generally the statistics are during the last year we've seen help desk calls go up, but the clever thinking is that they're going to go down. We're going to see much more in the way of self-serve. So we are going to need to morph what we do. We're going to look at that, the data management and analytics side much more. We're going to be reviewing the processes within our various departments and deciding whether they can be made more efficient using technology and automation. We're going to be developing these applications, and we are going to be the people who are going to enable machine learning, AI, and all this innovative stuff that's going to make an enormous difference. Next slide. And as I say, these housing associations we work for need help. When we did this future gazing, future shaping survey a couple of years ago, It was the second survey we'd done in 2 years. And what we noticed was that in the first time we did it, which was back in 2017, that I think about 63% of organizations said they were actively going through a transformation program. And when we did the same survey 2 years later, there were less, 54% I think it was, were doing going through active transformation. And why? Because so many of these transformation programs had failed to hit the objectives that these organizations had wanted. So yeah, there was a need for change and support. Coronavirus, just before I finish, been a fantastic proof of concept. So many of the things IT people have been saying for a very long time have been proven, and we've had to start working online anytime, any place, starting to use low-code kind of applications to develop solutions for remote working. We've seen enormous amount of channel shift go on as people who'd resisted, going online and dealing with organizations have now had to. And there are now some social housing providers who have pretty much got 80% of all customer transactions happening online. So these things are very possible. So just to finish off, so back to this report that Din did, there were 4 recommendations that came out of it. The first was that IT must have that voice at the highest level if these organizations are going to succeed and flourish in the future. We need to develop skills internally. We need to change the way we operate throughout the business, but particularly within IT. And we need to make sure we develop those skills that we need for the future. We need to better use data. Absolutely, data is going to be king, and it is going to make all the difference to organizations. So those with the skills to help to achieve that are going to be in huge demand. And then we need to move services to the cloud. We need to be able to operate anytime, any place, anywhere. So that brings me to a conclusion. Just to say, last slide. If we get this right as IT teams, if we can help enable our organizations to use technology better, we will make the world a happier place. And it's a fact. If you use technology properly, you'll protect your income streams, you'll create efficiencies and provide better services that represent better value for money, and you will make the job of management easier and less stressful. And stress is the enemy, believe me. So if you've ever wondered why you guys all come to work in the morning, this is it.